Hello, all. This is Tami Brunk, or Sky Woman, and I'm here with you today on July 1st to offer a transmission on the astrology of this July 2023. So let's just take a really good deep breath together. We have really been coming through some wild times, and my sense is that since Pluto moved back into the sign of Capricorn, many of us have been feeling another kind of wave of massive change, and also kind of an undercurrent of a deeper, really deep assessment of our place in life and the direction where we're headed, and really feeling and seeing the places where we want to change, we want to do things differently. I'm going to talk about the new moon in a moment, but I want to talk about what I feel is kind of the undercurrent that can feel challenging, but that can offer tremendous gift. And that has to do with Pluto in the last degrees of Capricorn and Saturn in Pisces, as an undercurrent through this next year, 2 years really, and something that I think is offsetting or creating actually a very useful counterbalance to some of the very high, bright, expansive frequencies that we're also moving into, with Pluto also then moving into Aquarius, back and forth from Aquarius, and with the solar flares, and so much also that is happening that is really, in a sense, I am of a mind, as are many other spiritual teachers or astrologers, that we are being flooded with light, that this planet at this moment of so much profound change, that we each individually and that we as a species and as a planet are receiving tremendous assistance from the world behind this world. I just want to begin there and say I feel that is very clearly present in as a reality around us right now, that we're in kind of a graced zone when we can really tune into all of the support that's around us at all times. So I want to begin there, and I'll speak more into that in a little bit. But I also want to say that I think there are actually three aspects that can feel challenging and interesting. I'm going to start with that because I've had some really good insights around this lately that I think can be helpful. So the first is Pluto at 29 degrees Capricorn. The second is Saturn in Pisces. And the third is this, what we are going to be experiencing for the first 2 weeks of July, with the South Node, the North Node moving through down to 0 Taurus, and the South Node at 0 Scorpio. So basically with those three, the transmissions I've been getting about them lately is that there is something about, in a healthy diet, for example, traditional peoples, our ancestors all would have understood something. And if you're a Chinese medicine practitioner, someone bringing back wisdom from the past, you would often understand that it's very important to have a certain amount of bitters that you eat. This is kind of a traditional concept that certain kinds of greens or certain kind of flavors that are bitter actually are incredibly important for our digestive system, and to kind of balance out the ways that we are consuming or digesting our foods and the minerals and the different what we take into our bodies. What I've been recognizing recently, and this has kind of changed everything for me, is that it's actually very important, especially for those of us who have, we come in as kind of these light workers, as healers, as people who we know at some place deep in our bones that we're here to bring more love, more kindness, more compassion into this world. We know we were born here for a reason, but we can also look at around at a time like now. And if you're really paying attention to the news, or even if you go out and you're just spending time with, quote, everyday people, as if there were such a thing, you'll find that there is increasingly, it can feel as if there are increasing levels of suffering and a pervasive kind of sense of disconnection that can be very disheartening. So what I want to say for those of us, everyone listening who has this mission to bring love, but might feel disheartened at certain points. And like, is anything changing? You know, it feels like it's getting darker, not lighter. I'll just share the story that recently I was traveling to New Mexico, and I was taking a short trip. I'm going to be spending more time there this summer. I'm in a big transition myself that feels pretty tender. But I had gone for just a weekend driving 13 hours there and back. And the drive there was very intense because it was my first foray away from this place where I've lived for a very long time, and kind of a taste of what it was going to be like to be away from what's become my home. And just to say, I'm not absolutely certain that I won't go back at some stage in a bit of a different context, but there's that very real possibility as I'm more and more dedicated and committed to listening to what the deeper truth is inside of me, and balancing the very real and healthy counterpoint that I get from my community and the people that I love and the earth around me, with the deep intention to hear the wisdom that lives inside of me that can only be accessed by me, right? So my future is uncertain at this moment. It can be unnerving. So as I was driving, I felt really drawn to start listening to these conversations with, I've mentioned before, Kimberly Ann Johnson, and then Stephen Jenkinson. Now, Stephen Jenkinson he's someone that he's from Canada, and he spent years overseeing a hospice program in a large hospital there. And so over the last number of years of his life, he had spent time with people who were dying, thousands of people. And if you listen to Stephen, it's very sobering. I mean, this is something that this is what I mean by it's bitter medicine. Listening to him is bitter medicine. I'm going to give another example. I was speaking with my friend Ibtisam the other night, and she is a Palestinian poet and author. I just adore her. But sometimes she can be, she's very blunt about what she sees in the larger US society. The trends that feel to her very dysfunctional and kind of soul sick. I'm using that term. It can be also very jarring. Another third example is this book, White Women. It's written by an African-American woman and an Indian woman, and it's very piercing. It's very uncomfortable to read. So these are three influences in my life that recently I've been kind of taking in some of that medicine. Let me just say, Ibtisam also is an absolute delight, as are the authors of this book, and Stephen Jenkinson. There's beauty, right? And again, especially when we're trying to focus on raising our frequency and focusing on being conscious creators and all of these other things that I actually very much believe in. What I found was that, so I'm listening to these different voices, and I'm, the part of me that is like this kind of, wants to turn more towards the light, and wants to focus more on love, and wants to focus more on what feels like a higher frequency. Part of me was just like, what are you doing? Why are you listening to this? And Stephen Jenkinson in particular is like, why are you taking in all this very heavy stuff? And what I came to recognize is that when I listen to him, it's very, very uncomfortable in the moment, but it's deeply unsettling. He speaks a lot about, how many of these people, in his estimation, did not die well. He talks a lot about the massive fears people have of death, and the way that our society is death phobic to such a degree that, for example, those of us who are very spiritual might say, for example, use the word transition because we're really uncomfortable with the word death. So we shy away from it. And I think a lot of what he's speaking to is, what does that do to an individual? And how does that, in a sense, when we're trying to avoid what's hard, how does that actually, how does that cause us to miss opportunities to deepen our humanity and our compassion and I think actually our capacity to be with and sit with other humans in uncomfortable contexts, and become deeper, have our hearts become more more tenderized, more broken open, to really be capable of being with others and being broken open in a way that makes us more real, more human. So listening was very painful. It was very challenging. It brought up a lot for me around choices in my life, around trends, tendencies that I have to avoid pain, to avoid discomfort. Um, and in the moments I kind of after I got to this event that was incredibly powerful, and for a few days after, I was just like, why did I do that? Why did I feel the need to take in so much of what felt very dark? And fast forward to last night, I ended up in this circle. I ended up with a circle. Now, let me just say, part of the reason I'm beginning here is because this month we do have Sun opposite Pluto. We have Sun square Chiron. We begin the month with the full moon, the Capricorn full moon. And so my sense is that there is a lot of this deeper transformational medicine for us that can really benefit us. That's why I begin here. And of course, Pluto squaring the nodes actually. And that's a very powerful activation. And South Node, in Scorpio. So this is why I'm speaking to this now. Last night, I found myself in a circle. I decided to go to a gathering to commemorate the life of a friend, a man I have not known, that I knew almost like a family member years ago when he was dating my sister, but he's also been part of this extended community here in Columbia, Missouri, which has been an on again, off again home base for me, and part of a community that's like family, right? And Woody was part of what I think of now as my elders in these communities that are very progressive, that had practiced a lot of things that now younger people are doing, like co-housing and exploring different kinds of relationship dynamics. And they called it RC, or co-counseling. So they were really exploring and experimenting with many different ways of doing community and relationship, these kinds of things. They were peace activists, many of them, during the Cold War. So, people that I really admire and respect. It was my older sister who was part of that community, and I always felt like they were extended, like aunties and uncles, right? So this friend and this former partner of my sister from many years ago, but someone who I had seen as recently as last year, he was a Buddhist. He was very devoted to his practice, and he was someone who had lived in intentional communities and really offered himself in service very, very beautifully, and just a very kind soul. And he had come from a very poor and a very traumatized background, generations of trauma in South Philly. But he had really broken out of the paradigm and the family patterns that he had come from. And he had really spent a lot of time in these communities of people, which is often the case, the people who are starting these intentional communities, or who are really on the forefront of progressive change. Often they come from wealth. That's often the case. But this friend, he, from the perspective of soul and spirit, as I see it, he had moved mountains. A tremendous soul. And yet he, like so many at this time, had really struggled deeply. He struggled deeply with body pain. He struggled deeply with depression, and from the trauma that he had experienced as a very young child. And so what had happened is that he took his life. And what I came to discover is that this is something that he had done twice, and the second time he was successful. And so I found myself in this circle of friends who were grieving, and he had no family, actually, he was still in touch with. So this circle of individuals, some of whom had stayed in close touch with him, even though he had lived in California, and his house had burnt down. And so he'd moved to a different area where he didn't have community. He was somewhat isolated, but still he had friends who checked in on him almost every day. And he was going to move back to this community in Missouri, and people were really looking forward to having him around, having him close. And for various reasons, part of which was health issues and just a kind of quality of life that I think he recognized that his quality of life was going to be very poor. He made a decision to take his life. And so I found myself in this circle of individuals who were really trying to wrestle with these questions of why did this happen? And, how did and I will just say too, my dear friend Ibtisam, I felt uncomfortable at certain points because she was asking very probing questions of two of these women who are the closest to him. And I was like, wow, that's like so invasive. But this often happens with Ibtisam. You know, she was a refugee. She is a woman who actually very much values authenticity and realness. And her question and her real interest in wanting to understand what had happened actually brought everyone together. Whereas before her questioning, half the group was kind of mulling around, looking at pictures, eating, but there was a sense of just kind of this, hard to say, very kind of ungrounded, people weren't coming together. There was just kind of this floating feeling like, what do we do? What do we do? There was just this very interesting kind of lost feeling that I felt later was very poignant, because I think in our society, there are a lot of places where, you know, we have lost our cultural framework for how to work through these very painful experiences. So that's what I felt at first. And I was very uncomfortable with it. I started crying at one point, but I just, the lack of connection I could feel was uncomfortable. And then Ibtisam was asking these questions of the woman who had been very close to this friend. And all of a sudden, what ended up happening is everyone came into this room and everyone became part of this conversation, and really asking the difficult, very tangible questions. Exactly what happened, you know, what was happening in his life, details. We were all trying to piece together what had happened. And I'm not going to go into too much more of it, but just to say that I ended up leaving that gathering feeling so deeply moved to have been there and to be a part of a community that was trying in a beautifully broken and imperfect way to look honestly at what needs mending, and to honor the life of this person and not try to wrap a bow around it, but just to be authentically wanting to understand. And I felt love. I felt very active, powerful, potent love in the coming together of these individuals who cared about a human who, like so many humans, was born without a sense of being held by the larger societal institutions, without a blood family. And, you know, I feel like we live in a time where there are many people who aren't deeply held, or who are in need of a lot of tending, because these are challenging times. And so it felt to me like some painful medicine and also beauty. I felt very privileged to be in that circle. So I share this story because I think that many of us really are, especially in the spiritual communities, trying to come to a very tender balance, again, between um, what we need, this, I believe in this sense of just zest for life and beauty and aliveness, and moving towards joy and moving towards what feels, you know, orienting more to pleasure than pain. And, you know, all these things I believe in deeply, you know, that we're here to create. A woman this last weekend that I was with, she said, you know, I want to out create the heaviness of the world with my beauty. And I love that. So, you know, but it, and it's not, but it's also, and it's also to me, um, more and more. And even I think part of this is brought to mind for me because I am moving from the home where I've been living, and potentially I'm moving away from this community on the land, this little village, for various reasons. It is possible I will come back in a different kind of constellation. Um, but in this moment that I'm leaving, I've been, as this is what happens, I've been reconnecting with people, and I've been meeting new people, and I've been seeing how everything I needed has been all around me, all at the same, you know, all the time. And this is what happens. Which again makes it so that I know, whereas in the past I would have just maybe felt very strongly, I need to leave, I'm never coming back. I'm creating a soft space for myself to say, I'm taking a vision quest in New Mexico. I'm feeling this new energy, because when I'm out west, I feel a connection to the astrology in the sky that's very different. There are patterns I go into here in Missouri, my birthplace, that can feel very Cancer South Node, for lack of a better way to say it for me. For those who are astrologers, you know, the South Node can be a place we get stagnant. But for me, this has been a moment, a poignant moment of deathing and birthing. And, you know, I wouldn't have it any other way than to feel fully and to be fully present, and to actually want to learn more and more the skill set of that. So this is for all of you out there who are going through a hard time, who maybe from a spiritual view, you may feel that you're doing it wrong or you're low vibe or whatever. And I just want to say to you, wherever you're at, this is where love can find you. And this is where life can unmake you so you can become more true. For some reason, it just feels very important to start there. So, all right, I've spent a lot of time on this already, but I wanted to share some real stories because I've been really in the heart of that change and that kind of vulnerable energy that I think many of us are in. So with that, I am going to shift a little bit into a mode of just going through the biggest activations of this month. And we begin this month with the full moon in Capricorn. So I'm going to focus some special attention on that. Okay. And, I think also, what I was just sharing with you is kind of Capricornian, like I am here with lots of Capricorn. I'm here to drop into a bit of more of the elder consciousness, the elder state. And when I say elder, I mean to be someone who's here to be in service to community and to be part of it all, not to try to separate myself up out of it, of this milieu of human, but to actually be present within it and to seek to be in service in some way that is actually also regenerative and for me as well, and sustainable for myself. So, all right. So July 3rd, this is going to be Sunday night and Monday morning, is a time, is the full moon in Capricorn. And the exact time is Monday, 1:30. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the Cancer new moon. Wrong one. Let me share the Cancer or the Capricorn full moon. It's a full super moon so this is important. So on July 3rd, and it's 6:39 a.m. on Monday morning. So we're going to be really seeing the full super moon Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night. It's going to be very strong all 3 nights. And it is a super full moon, meaning that the moon is very close to the Earth. So within the Earth's kind of orbit, it's near perigee. So you're going to feel it, viscerally, physically, and you're probably already feeling it stronger than if the moon was further from the Earth. So it's a super full moon. That's number one. That's actually the most important thing to begin with, is just say you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it in your body. You're going to feel it in the waters of your body. You're going to feel emotional surges. Look for that. That's okay. Feeling is not something to be afraid of. Feeling is something to be with, to learn to stand in and allow ourselves to be transformed by. So it's a full super moon and in Capricorn. And so it's interesting. There are many layers of this full moon that are very exciting on many levels, because there are a number of trines. There is there's a trine to Saturn, and there's also a trine to a sextile to your Jupiter. And so we've got this kind of balancing, harmonious energy that comes in with this as well. We also have something that's happening this month, is that we have Mercury and then the Sun and then Juno all activating Sirius, which is a very important star, the brightest star in the sky, and a star that also July 4th and the birthday of the US has strong connections to Sirius. Barbara Hand Clow, astrologer I really love, would say that Sirius has strong connections to ancient Egypt and to Isis, the goddess Isis. And Barbara Hand Clow would say that Syrians, if you happen to have a strong connection to Sirius, I know I do, that they tend to have a very much of a kind of an intellectual orientation. It can be more cerebral. When you really cultivate your skills, you can cultivate skills in sacred geometry, for example. But what she would say Sirius rules is the 6th dimension. And the 6th dimension is the place where we can align ourselves, attune ourselves to an ideal, the most congruent or coherent expression of anything, of our bodies, for example. The example she gives is that when we do yoga, what are we doing? We are actually moving our bodies into a state where we are at the optimal level of health and vibration and frequency. So that's what Sirius is about, is helping us, like in ancient Egypt, the spiritual technologies that they had, to move ourselves into a state of being that is kind of optimized, that is in deep, great harmony with our surroundings. So that's one thing to understand. So Sirius offers us that kind of medicine. And this is also leading up to a very amazing time that we talk about a lot, that is the Lion's Gate. And Lion's Gate here in the north, along these many, especially in these northern latitudes, in North America, across North America, about where I'm at 38, but it depends on your latitude. But all through July, and then like around Lammas or Lionsgate, Sirius is beginning to appear as morning star. It's beginning to appear, you say Haleiacal rise. You could begin to see Sirius in the morning sky before sunrise. So that is a very significant time when it's like this beautiful bright star is showing up in the morning sky, and our hearts are also kind of waking up in this way, and we ourselves are opening into a way of being that's much more exalted, you could say. And when I say exalted, I mean just more alive, more harmonious, more peaceful, more at a frequency that creates more harmony around us. So I want to speak into that. So that's something we're feeling already begin to be activated here at this full moon. That's a medicine you can tune into, because Mercury is with Sirius and the sun is approaching Sirius, and the moon will be opposing that part of the sky within a number of hours after. So that's one of the signatures of this full moon. Also, that we have the actual moon is with Nunki, and Nunki is the vane of the arrow in the Archer constellation. So it has the feature of being kind of like, if you draw back the arrow in the bow, it's like you're setting your intention. Usually we think of intention setting as new moon, but we can do that with this full moon as well. Just really focusing your attention on what wants to be recalibrated, what wants to be refined, what do you want to build in your life? And you can start by seeing what's falling apart, what's not working, and then take some time to focus very intently on what is it that I want to construct in the place of what is changing, shifting, moving. How can I do this differently? What do I want to build moving forward? And then pull that arrow back by setting that strong, clear intention. And you can almost even imagine, you can look at the full moon and imagine, even do the gesture. That's very powerful. That's very Syrian, to bring the physical into it. And then bring that drill back, and then point to the full moon and just say, okay, state your intention. My intention is point, to stand in my true leadership, to claim the authentic leader that I am, to claim the authority that lives inside of me. These are kind of Capricorn concepts. It can also be a time to tune into and deepen the work we've already been doing with Venus and Mars at the summer solstice, meeting very close to one another and having the moon activate the crown chakra, or help us to awaken to our own sovereignty, our own royal nature. That happened at the summer solstice. It's still with us, the reverberation of that. And so from the Venus cycle perspective, this whole month until July 17th, we have the crown chakra activation. The goddess is put on her crown, meaning the Capricorn goddess. And I talked about this last time, meaning that we are in a process now of surveying our domain, of owning our own royalty, owning the aspect of the self learning to love ourselves more completely, and really honor ourselves, honor our divinity, claim our crown, meaning that we ourselves are here to take responsibility for our own lives. We're here to take responsibility for our place in the world, and how it is that we wish to transmit, how it is we wish to make a difference in the lives of those around us, the earth. It's to really step it up a notch, to claim our inner leadership in whatever way or shape or form that works for us. And again, it does begin with radical radiant self-love. That's Leo. So how do we make choices to shine from the light at the heart of who we are, and to become authentic and real and true, and offer ourselves to life in a beautiful way? And again, what's my domain? What is my sphere of influence? And how can I serve there? You know, what do I want my influence to look and feel like? The thing I keep saying to myself is, how can I leave this land, these people, this community better than I found it? How can this human being that I'm with, of course, beginning with myself, how can and we don't have control over all of these things, but, how can my state of being benefit those around us and me and my actions and my way of being? How can it benefit? And this isn't about perfection. So I should say, when Capricorn is activated, it's really important to acknowledge we can also get caught into patterns of guilt or shame or perfectionism, and just understand that little taste of those feelings is not bad per se. Again, it's like that bitter medicine. Sometimes, I can listen to a story that makes me initially feel really guilty or sad or kind of horrified by my level of superficiality or unconsciousness in a situation. And that's not all bad. That can be, a taste of that can make me recoil and then have my whole heart say, oh my goodness, like that's not how I want to be. And I want to step into a place of greater compassion and humanity, to be more humane, to really care about that other being. So Capricorn can help us to grow up in that way. But it's not about getting caught in these endless cycles of guilt and shame and just getting stuck there. It's not about that. We really know that doesn't really support us anymore. And again, there's a lot of medicine right now about becoming adults, adulting. And when I say adulting, I mean by that acknowledging the actual really big influence we have on the world around us, and then choosing to rise into that with grace and with self-love, and I think a humble heart. Because I think true kings and queens do have a sense of beauty and generosity of heart and love, and they transmit beauty, but they serve. We're here to serve. So that's also in the field. Okay, so now after I've spoken a little bit, the other thing about this full moon that's very interesting is that it's actually activating at the same degree as Pluto and Saturn were in 2020 when they came together. And so there's also going to be a coming up to light, or a illumination of some of the themes that we saw at that time. And perhaps we can hope that, and we can set strong, clear intentions that what comes to light in our consciousness is just deeper growth and awareness and healing and evolution, that we accelerate the evolutionary wisdom that comes from the experiences that we've had, what we don't want to do again, and what we want to have learned from the experiences we had there. So it's a good time to reflect. Okay, and what else? So some of the other big themes this month, I think from here on out, I'm going to kind of skim through the most important activations, because I've already really talked about a lot. I'll say that Venus and Mars are both square. They're very close right now. So there's something about sacred union, and I've seen this all around me so much. There's a longing. There is a deep longing for many of us in, again, maturing our relationship between the feminine and the masculine inside of ourselves, really seeing where we might be too far over in one direction, and then self-correcting. And then also just deeply honoring and cherishing, I will say physically, the men and women and the ways that we show up, the beauty of the complementary nature of the two sexes. And then also, again, with our non-binary friends and our trans friends and community members and family, that there be an honoring that often these are the individuals who are actually helping us to better understand and heal some of the toxic layers of femininity and masculinity. Now, I say that also, again, wanting to honor that a trend I've seen, and in fact, I'll just say part of where I've been the last number of years is, very interestingly, I've found myself in a community of many men, and I feel that very beautiful, strong men who, like me, have their challenges and are not perfect beings like myself, like any of us as women. None of us are perfect. But I have seen the beauty and just how in service they are and how willing they are to do their own work. And so, you know, I lost my father, I lost my dad over the last 11 years, and I don't have any more immediate men in my family. And so I think this was, and I also was shown in dreams that I was so focused and I had such a strong female lineage that I was out of balance. I needed to connect more to the masculine. So that's a lot of what I've been what the work I've been doing is, you know, I'm a very female-centered person. So some of it's been very uncomfortable. It's like, how does this female body engage with masculine bodies? How do I, you know, having had a history of some of sexual assault and other experiences of violence, you know, how do I literally acknowledge that I actually have some fear of male-bodied people? And the sadness of that as well, and the grief of the places where you know, I think there are weapons that we carry in our gender against the others. And I've seen how deeply piercing and painful it is to recognize the places where I diminish men and I diminish some of the really beautiful ways that they complement the feminine. And so I'm in the process of mending and healing and repairing my relationship with the masculine still. Now, me leaving this community right now also is acknowledging that at this perimenopausal time of my life, I'm needing to balance back again now and be with more circles of women. So, you know, a lot of us are kind of exploring and navigating that realm of gender, of sexuality, of polarity. And so, you know, with Venus and Mars very close to one another right now, there's an opportunity for great healing. And I would say for us to bless both polarities, bless them, love the hell out of them, love the complementary nature. You know, we get to live in a universe where there is this, where there's polarity, and many people are learning to play with that and enjoy that. But let's respect it deeply, and let's respect the heart of each human and see the human behind the gender. Let's not get caught in punishing or abusing each other because of something that we suffered ourselves or that our ancestors suffered. I think there's a great call for kindness at this time. And, you know, that just feels to me like that's part of what's happening with this Venus and Mars activation. So, okay, so I want to speak to that. And then let's see what else. Mars, Mercury, and Venus are all moving into Virgo this month. And so again, there's a big focus on sovereignty, claiming our bodies, claiming our right to be, claiming your right to take up space. This is a big, huge theme. Virgo and Leo both. I am sovereign. I am whole. I am divine. I am a facet of the divinity, of the divine. It's really a good time to connect to. I am part of this beautiful source energy, to claim our spark of God inside of us and to gather around us and acknowledge all of the ways that spirit, that divine are always and continually supporting us. There's a lot of angelic presence right now surrounding us. So tune into that. We are supported on all sides. I have felt this so deeply recently. Okay. The other piece, and then I think I'm going to complete, is I will speak into the new moon in, this is one of the big, yeah, there's a couple more, a couple of the big other activations. One is that we have a phenomenal new moon, July 17th. That is a big moment this month where it's a new moon in Cancer. And that new moon in Cancer features an extraordinary event, which is that we finally have the nodes moving. If we follow the lunar nodes and the true node, then we have the nodes moving from Taurus North Node and Scorpio South Node to Aries North Node and Libra South Node. So I will speak more to this in future videos, but just to understand, there is a massive shift that's happening. And so what's happening then is we are now moving into a zone of really healing at a deeper level. Some of the patterns of codependence, some of the patterns of, you know, how we separate from one another. And it's much like what I was speaking to earlier with the masculine and feminine dance. This question is, how can I really be fully all of who I am, and then dance with and honor your desire to be all of who you are? How can we bring more gentleness and more love into that equation? You know, we really are here for each other as well as for ourselves. So there's going to be a mending of the human heart and a dropping down into the deepest layers of Libra the origination point of Libra, this lineage of the soulmate territory, and how it is that we are soulmates for each other. And we're going to see the shadow of that. We're going to see the shadow of codependence. And we've already been working with that, but there's another deep layer that we're going to be really steeped in, saturated in over the next couple of years of really deeply healing our personal human hearts, our ways of relating with masculine, feminine, and the ways we other and separate from each other, healing that. And so that we can come into more congruence and more harmony and more of a peacemaking dynamic with each other. And part of that comes from being willing to step into the Aries fire of saying, this is who I am. This is my truth. These are the places where I need to forge a path ahead that no one else may be able to understand. But my spirit says, yes. My spirit says, go. My spirit says, it's for you to go where no one's ever gone before. And when you do, then you turn around and you say, please come with me. Because we don't do this all alone. You know, Aries does forge ahead, but then Aries turns around because Aries is a cardinal sign. Aries belongs to her tribe, his community, and is in service to and guardianship of the community and the people and the land. Aries is here as a true guardian and must be the way shower and the trailblazer. So be courageous, be brave, be who you are, and know that as you are, and as you also include and bring into the new territory that you're traversing, bring others with you. That creates more love, it creates more truth, it creates more peace and more harmony. Okay, so just a couple of other things. One is that this is very important. Venus has been in a Capricorn cycle since January of 2022 and is coming to the completion of that cycle. And so right now we have in the evening star phase of Venus, the ending of the cycle, which that began in December of this last year. And it completes when Venus is between the sun and the earth. When Venus is in we call it the metamorphic underworld phase, when she's shifting from one cycle to the next. Where we're at in the Venus cycle right now, she's evening star, she's coming to the end of her evening star journey. And the goddess, we think of that as the goddess who has gone through a death and a rebirth cycle, that she has been going through 7 chakra gates, in this case 8, reclaiming each of her vestments. So we're building, it's a Capricorn cycle. So since December of last year, we've been in a building process, just slowly building our foundations back, strengthening ourselves step by step, moving into a new way of being, stepping into greater leadership, greater self-authority. So we've been at the crown chakra gate. I talked about that already. And now we're going to be shifting into the soul star chakra gate, the 8th moon Venus conjunction. It's the very last Venus moon gate of the evening star cycle. And so the goddess gets her crown back, also the god at this point. And then the activation beginning on the 20th of July through that next month is the soul star chakra. Now this can be understood as a chakra that's about a foot above your head, according to different ways of seeing and being with this. But this is a chakra that connects us to the Akashic records, connects us to the multiverse in a sense. And so if you find yourself over this next month, beginning, around the 20th and after that, really tapping into, you could say almost your oversoul, or a much greater kind of overview of your life or of your experience, don't be surprised. We get to see things from a higher view. So that's one of the things to understand. We're connecting to our deeper soul essence, and that's flooding down into us. We're being flooded with wisdom, knowledge from the past of who we really are, who we actually truly are at a deeper soul level. So that's happening. We also have Venus and Chiron are stationing retrograde later this month, nearer to the end of the month. And Venus is July 22nd, July 23rd is Chiron retrograde. And so this is a very big feature of the month as well. We've got these 2 major planets. And, Chiron does this every year. Venus stations retrograde only every 1.5 years. And so Venus will be retrograde until later in August, early August. But when she's retrograde, she's very close to the Earth. So you're really feeling the strong Venus energy. She's very bright in the evening sky. And she's preparing for a very powerful transformational kind of quantum leap. So again, this coming month, we're moving into the quantum. we're moving into a place where we're opening to many different possibilities, many timelines. And so again, this is why we stay steady. We stay steady in our hearts, we stay steady in our practices, ground, center, stay centered in love, stay centered in kindness, be willing to be the healer that you are and tending to your own, what you're responsible for in your own well-being, and then letting that pour out into the world around you. With Chiron retrograde, we're going to be feeling Chiron very close as well. So again, and it's been squaring the sun. So there's this, the wounded healer is also awake and alive in our world. And that again tunes into my first stories of letting our hearts be broken open by each other, by our own experiences, to allow ourselves to be made more human and more humane. So I'm going to end it there. And I'm just offering you so much gratitude for being with me and in this offering, and so grateful to have you there on the other side of this conversation. And please, when you listen, share some comments, subscribe, share with your friends. Again, I offer sessions, I offer readings. You can check that out on my site. I am going to be offering a new course soon, so look for that. But I hope that you have a beautiful July. You're not alone. No, you're not alone. You are surrounded by love on all sides. And know that whatever your journey at this time, may it be, you dignify your own journey and love yourself through whatever big changes you're making, because many of us are making big changes. And know that there is a weaving. If you're experiencing the bitterness today, then tomorrow there may be this great inflowing of joy and of love like you've never felt. So sending you big love and all kinds of blessings. And I will speak to you again in a month.